The dropship broke through Cheretha's upper atmosphere like a blade pushing through smoke. Below, the once beautiful planet had become a graveyard of treaties, flat plains of ash, forests burned to skeletal remains, and rivers that now reflected only dull gray light. The sky itself looked exhausted. Captain Elias Drake watched the ruined landscape through the transparent visor of his helmet as the ship descended. Cherith had hosted 57 peace attempts over the last century. 57 failures. 57 fresh scars on the land. He hoped he wouldn't be the 58th. He pulled his uniform collar straight, matte black fabric with a small silver insignia, United Terran Diplomatic Corps, Special Action Division. A diplomat with authority to negotiate. A soldier with authority to finish what diplomacy couldn't. A voice crackled over the intercom. Captain Drake, final approach. Very escort waiting. Elias exhaled slowly. Copy. He detached himself from the harness and checked his gear. No rifles, no grenades. Humans negotiated differently, they entered unarmed. Trust first. Steal later, if required. The dropship landed on a steel platform overlooking what remained of Cheretha's capital. Wind whipped ash across the ground. The hatch opened, releasing a blast of cold air. Elias stepped out onto the charred soil. Waiting at the bottom of the ramp was a very honor guard, sleek armor, obsidian-colored, reflecting blue light from the insignia etched into their breastplates. Their eyes glowed faintly, a trait of their species. Their leader stepped forward. Tall. Composed. Silver markings trailed from her temples down her throat, forming geometric patterns on her violet skin. Strategos Rhea Valen. Her presence commanded attention. Not through force, but through certainty. Captain Elias Drake. Her voice carried the weight of authority. We appreciate humanity's neutrality. Walk with me. Elias followed her across a shattered courtyard. Under their feet, broken mosaic tiles formed fragments of old peace symbols, circles that had been cracked apart by war. Strategos Rhea, Elias said. The Terran Union believes the war can still be stopped. The Terran Union is optimistic. She kept her eyes forward. The Very have learned optimism is expensive. He studied her profile. The Very were honor-bound warriors, controlled emotion, rigid duty. Yet Rhea's posture held tension beneath the discipline. He read her silence correctly. You don't believe the Zarthan Imperium will negotiate. I believe the Zarthans attend summits only to measure how close their enemies are before they strike. They reached the summit hall, an enormous structure of black alloy and white stone. Inside, alien delegates filled a long oval chamber. Zarthan sat at one end, Very at the other. The contrast was stark. The Very sat upright, still, as though carved from discipline and restraint. The Zarthans lounged with predatory ease. Their crystalline armor glinted like glass edged with knives. Their leader, High Commander Zalar, stood when Elias entered, towering over everyone in the room. His armor reflected Elias's image back at him, small, insignificant. Zalar's voice was smooth, nearly pleasant. A human emissary. His lips curved slightly. How quaint. Rhea moved subtly between Elias and Zalar's line of sight. We begin the summit immediately. Zalar raised a brow. Do I need your permission, Strategos? You need the rules of the summit, she replied. A Zarthan delegate scoffed. Rules are for equals. The room tightened. Elias kept his voice level. Gentlemen, we are here to avoid another century of destruction. Zalar leaned forward. Are you here to negotiate, or to lecture? He wanted Elias angry. Wanted to prove humans were emotional and unfit to mediate. Elias didn't take the bait. The only side I'm on is peace. A soft hum rippled beneath the chamber, slight enough that only someone trained to notice shifts in atmosphere would detect it. Elias paused. The air felt different. Off. Beneath the table, a vibration tremored through the floor. Rhea saw his expression change. Captain? Elias's hand drifted to the edge of the table. Not to reach a weapon, he didn't have one, but to stabilize himself. Zalar's crystalline eyes sharpened, almost amused. Something wrong, human? The hum grew louder. Ria's pupils contracted. That sound, it's not structural. The lights overhead flickered. Elias's instinct screamed, run. Everyone down! The first explosion hit. A shockwave ripped through the summit chamber, blowing out the rear wall in a cascade of fire and dust. Elias was thrown forward as the table flipped. Delegates crashed into the debris. The Zarthans didn't scramble for cover. They stood. Weapons deployed from their forearms in a smooth mechanical shift, barrel-like structures glowing as they primed to fire. Ria staggered to her feet. Her blade snapped from a wrist sheath, silent, controlled, lethal. A second explosion tore a hole through the ceiling. Stone and metal crashed down. Elias lunged across the collapsing floor and grabbed Ria, yanking her into cover just as a steel beam slammed into where she had been standing. She gasped, sharp, involuntary. Blood streaked her armor. A shard of shrapnel had pierced her side, deep enough that even her disciplined expression cracked with pain. Elias pressed his hand to the wound. You're losing too much blood. Ria gritted her teeth. Strategos do not show weakness. You're not showing weakness, he said. You're showing that you bleed. Her knees buckled. He caught her and dragged her behind a toppled column. Across the smoke-filled chamber, Zarthan soldiers swept forward, executing very delegates systematically. Not a rogue terrorist attack. Not chaos. A purge. Zalor watched from the far end of the hall like a judge observing a sentence being carried out. He wasn't surprised. He knew. They planned this, Elias whispered. Ria's breast shuddered. The very have prophecy. We never saw betrayal from above. Her hand trembled as she pressed it against his chest, urgent, desperate. Leave me. You must get out. He tightened his grip on her shoulders. No. You are not of this war. He looked into her eyes. Steady. Unyielding. Peace is everyone's war. Her vision blurred, blood staining her lips. I will slow you down. I'm not leaving you. A crash echoed, Zarthan enforcers clearing the path. Ria's voice weakened. You don't understand. If I die, the Very will never return to diplomacy. The war will burn the stars. He heard it then, a faint rhythmic tone inside his suit. A biometric countdown. Aegis hemocytes activated, blood transfusion viable. He had the means to save her. He also knew the cost. If he used the transfusion, he risked cardiac collapse. He might not make it out. But without her, 2 civilizations would detonate. She collapsed against him. Barely conscious. Her breath ghosted against his ear. Why help me, human? He braced her against his chest, shielding her from falling debris. Because someone has to stop the bleeding, he whispered. Zalor's amplified voice cut through the ruins. Find the human. Kill the strategos. Elias slid his hand beneath Ria's armor, pressing against the wound. He locked eyes with her. You are not dying on this floor. For the first time, her voice held fear. You cannot save me. He leaned in, voice low and certain. I already decided I will. He reached for the emergency injector on his belt. Her eyes widened in realization, horrified. You would sacrifice your blood? It's the only way. Her hand trembled against his. Why? He swallowed hard. Because peace is worth bleeding for. The summit hall burned around them, fire creeping along shattered beams, smoke drifting in thick curls. Screams had faded into a distant, awful quiet. The Zarthan soldiers moved through the debris with ruthless coordination, clearing survivors like they were debris in their path. Elias steadied his breath. Ria was slipping fast. Her pulse fluttered beneath his fingertips, shallow, unsteady. The shrapnel wound in her side pulsed with each weakening heartbeat. Her violet skin, once luminous, had turned ashen. Her voice was barely audible. You don't have time. Neither do you, he replied. His glove tapped the injector clip to his belt, thin, silver, unassuming. It carried the Aegis hemocytes, the experimental nanite accelerant engineered inside his bloodstream. A last resort tool. It could fuse ruptured tissue, rebuild blood vessels, restart a dying heart, but the cost was steep. His body would crash afterward. Rhea caught a ragged breath. Your blood will not match mine. Our biology. It's not the blood. Elias positioned the injector over the vein in his wrist. It's what's in it. Her eyes widened. You were modified. Enhanced, he corrected, voice clipped. Humanity wanted negotiators who could survive worst-case scenarios. Rhea's expression darkened. Your people turned diplomacy into a battlefield. He looked at her, not as a commander, not as an emissary, but as a woman fighting to stay conscious. No, he whispered. They turned humans into the shield that stands between war and everything worth saving. He plunged the injector into his wrist. It hissed, then released. His blood brightened under the skin, glowing faint silver as the nanites activated. Rhea flinched. Elias! He gripped the edge of her armor and pressed his bleeding wrist to her wound. The moment contact was made, the nanites flowed from him into her like liquid fire. They swarmed into the torn flesh, knitting damage faster than any natural healing. But the pain. It hit him like electricity ripping through muscle and bone. He clenched his jaw and forced himself to breathe. Stay with me, he muttered. Rhea's back arched, her fingers digging into the broken marble floor. Her expression tightened with a mixture of shock and agony. This feels wrong. That's the nanites reading your DNA. He forced himself to stay upright as dizziness flooded his vision. They're rewriting instructions. Healing. She gasped as the shard expelled itself from her flesh, clattering to the ground. Elias reached for her again, catching her head before it struck the stone. His muscles trembled under the strain. Don't fight them. Let them work. A beat passed. Then another. Her breathing steadied. The color returned to her skin, not just restored, but brighter, as if the very sigils on her temples reacted to the infusion. They glowed faintly, tracing delicate patterns like living stardust. Rhea opened her eyes, clear, focused, too sharp. What did you do to me? Saved you, he answered, and slumped against the wall, struggling to remain conscious. Her hand snapped out, catching his wrist. Why would you risk your life for mine? He blinked hard, vision swimming. Because you were the only one in this room who still believed in peace. She stared, longer than necessary. Then movement stirred beyond their cover. Heavy footsteps. Voices. Zarthan soldiers sweeping the wreckage. Elias dragged himself upright, fighting the tremor in his limbs. Can you stand? Rhea rose slowly, testing her balance. She no longer looked fragile. She looked furious. Yes. Elias retrieved a broken metal rod, a piece of collapsed railing, and held it like a weapon. She glanced at it, amused despite the situation. You plan to fight armored soldiers with that? It's not the weapon, he said. It's the timing. A Zarthan soldier stepped into their line of sight. The visor gleamed. Human located. Rhea moved before Elias could react. With a blur of motion, she seized the soldier's arm, twisted, and slammed him into a crumbled support beam. He collapsed without a sound. She retrieved his sidearm and tossed it to Elias. You bleed well, she said. Try not to waste it by dying. He smirked. Was that a compliment? Don't let it go to your head. More footsteps approached, 3 shapes moving through the smoke. Rhea flattened her back to the broken column, signaling with 2 fingers. 3 targets. Left flank. Close. He nodded once. They moved together. Elias hit first, driving the metal rod into the back of the lead soldier's knee. The soldier stumbled, balance broken, and Elias followed through with a blow to the visor. Glass cracked. The body fell. Rhea swept past the second and third soldiers like a shadow. A strike to the throat. A kick to the sternum. They dropped before they could speak. Elias was breathing hard, the nanite drain taking its toll. Rhea steadied him by the elbow. Your heart rate is unstable. That happens when you give someone your blood. Your people will punish you for this. Let them. Her grip tightened. Why do you keep saying such reckless things? He didn't hesitate. Because I mean them. Then a metallic echo thundered from the far side of the hall. Rhea stiffened. High Commander Zalor entered through a breach in the wall, towering, cold, flanked by armored soldiers. His crystalline visor reflected the burning room. He stared at Rhea. Alive. Then at Elias. Weak. Fascinating, Zalor murmured. The human bled for you. Elias stepped in front of Rhea, even though his legs trembled. You planned this ambush. Zalor clasped his hands behind his back. Of course. Peace is weakness. War is clarity. Rhea hissed. You slaughtered ambassadors. And yet the only casualty that truly matters is the one who failed to die. Zalor nodded toward her. You. Before Rhea could surge forward, Elias placed a hand on her arm, a silent plea for restraint. Zalor tilted his head. Tell me, human. Why sacrifice your blood for a species that will never thank you? Elias held his gaze. Because someone has to be first. Zalor's laughter echoed through the ruined chamber. Then he gave the command. Kill the human. Bring the strategos alive. The soldiers advanced. Elias whispered to Rhea. Go. Get to the eastern corridor. Find shelter. No. Rhea. I do not abandon those who save me. The soldiers closed in. Elias raised the sidearm. Rhea positioned beside him, blade drawn. Back to back, surrounded. She glanced at him, voice low and solemn. From this moment, she said, your blood is bound to my life. He swallowed. Is that symbolic? No. Her eyes glowed like burning stars. It is law. Then she spoke something in a phrase heavy with meaning. Or it right. Elias didn't understand the words, but he felt the shift. He wasn't her ally. He wasn't her escort. He was now something very culture had no higher word for. Her oathkin. The smoke inside the summit hall thinned just enough for Elias to see the edges of the chaos. Broken beams glowed with heat. Cracks ran along the walls like veins of fire. The air tasted like metal and dust. He stood beside Rhea, still breathing hard from the brief fight, heart unsteady from the nanite drain. She looked transformed, steady on her feet, eyes bright, no trace of the wound that had nearly killed her minutes ago. The transfusion worked. But the cost was still burning through him. You shouldn't be standing, she murmured, noticing the tremor in his hands. Elias forced a smirk. Diplomacy requires stamina? Rhea didn't smile back. Do not joke about your life being drained. Life being drained. He couldn't tell if she meant the blood loss or the fact that every heartbeat now felt uneven. Before he could answer, more Zarthan soldiers filtered through the broken entrance, weapons raised. They didn't attack. They formed a perimeter and waited. Zalor strode forward, confidence radiating from every slow step. His crystalline armor reflected the flames. You invoke the Oriate Rite, Zalor said to Rhea. A binding oath reserved for your sacred pairing rituals. You gave it to a human? Rhea stepped past Elias, shoulders high, voice firm. He saved my life. You reward him by chaining your future to an outsider. Zalor laughed quietly. How poetic. How weak. Elias leaned toward her. Want to explain what this Oriate Rite is? Rhea didn't look away from Zalor. In very law, if someone gives blood to save a sovereign's life, an eternal bond is formed. That person becomes oathkin. Elias blinked. Oathkin sounds like a title? It is influence, she said. And protection. And binding obligation. Zalor tilted his head. He belongs to your lineage now. Your blood is entwined. Elias stiffened. I didn't agree to a blood oath. Rhea's eyes slid to him. Not apologetic. Not hesitant. Your actions sealed the law, she said. The very do not waste life debts. Elias opened his mouth to argue, but the look she gave him, sharp, certain, silenced him. She wasn't claiming ownership. She was acknowledging consequence. Zalor turned his attention to Elias. Human. You bleed once and believe you deserve a throne? I don't want a throne, Elias said. Just peace. Zalor's lip curled. Peace exists only when one side kneels. Rhea stepped forward. We are done kneeling. The Zarthan commander snapped his fingers. Two soldiers dragged a metallic device into view, a black, angular machine with pulsing red nodes. Elias recognized tactical demolition tech instantly. They were about to collapse the rest of the hall. Zalor gestured casually. Destroy them. A soldier knelt beside the device. Rhea lowered her voice. They intend to bury us. Not if we move fast, Elias whispered. She analyzed the battlefield in a heartbeat. The blast radius would swallow everything within 20 meters. There was only one exit left, a shattered arc on the eastern wall, jagged but accessible. Rhea grabbed his arm. Can you run? He tested his legs. His heartbeat stuttered, but he nodded. You lead. I'll follow. They sprinted. The hall exploded behind them. A thunderous wave hurled them forward. Elias slammed into the floor, rolling until his helmet struck a pillar. He tasted blood. Rhea landed beside him, quickly regaining her footing. Chunks of ceiling crashed down, cutting off their escape route. They were trapped in a side corridor filled with twisting hallways and fallen debris. Elias pulled himself up using the wall. His body shook harder now, Aegis nanite depletion hitting hard. Rhea grabbed his wrist, steadying him. You will collapse if you keep pushing, she warned. He swallowed against the nausea rising in his throat. I'll rest when we're safe. Rhea suddenly pressed her palm to his chest, right over his sternum. He froze. Her hand radiated warmth unlike anything he'd felt from her species. Very eyes were mirrors of control, but now hers softened, just enough for him to glimpse what she rarely showed. You gave blood willingly, she said. No Very has ever seen such an act. Elias let out a shaky laugh. Humans do impulsive things. No. Her voice lowered. Humans do brave things. Before he could answer, footsteps echoed. Zarthan soldiers, closing fast. Rhea's posture snapped back to sharp precision. Follow. They entered a narrow passage lined with open steel supports and fractured tiles. Rhea moved ahead, silently leading him through a series of angled pillars. Elias recognized the tactic. She wasn't just navigating. She was funneling. Where are we going? He whispered. She paused and touched her fingers to the wall, tracing a very sigil etched into the metal. A sanctuary. A hiss vibrated beneath the floor. The wall opened. Inside was a small chamber, the kind used for wartime negotiations before the planet fell. A table, a hollow interface, and shielding capable of blocking scanners. Elias staggered in and collapsed onto the wall. Rhea activated the locking sequence. We have minutes before they try to breach. Elias inhaled through the pain. Then tell me. What is the Orate right really? Rhea faced him fully. When blood is given freely to preserve the sovereign's life, that person becomes more than ally. More than protector. They become the sovereign's equal in law. His breathing paused. Equal? Yes. She stepped closer. Your decisions can override military action. Your orders hold the same weight as mine. If I fall, authority defaults to you. Elias stared at her, stunned. He'd wanted peace, not power. Rhea, I didn't intend. That is why the bond chose you. He blinked. The bond chose. Intention matters, she said. Most would give blood to gain power. You gave it because you couldn't watch someone die. Elias opened his mouth to respond. The walls shook. A heavy impact struck the chamber door. Rhea drew her blade. They found us. Elias pushed himself to his feet despite the shaking in his knees. We only have one exit. There is another, she said, and touched a different sigil. A panel slid aside, revealing an escape corridor sloping downward into the darkness. He stared. A hidden route. Built for sovereign evacuation. She motioned him through. Go. He moved, but his legs faltered halfway. Rhea grabbed him around the waist, supporting his weight. Her voice dropped, soft, steady, nothing like the battlefield steel she showed to others. You saved me. Now I save you. Together they descended into the hidden tunnel. The walls sealed behind them, silencing the echoes of the Zarthan assault. Elias leaned into her shoulder, breathing hard. If we survive this, what happens next? Are we just fugitives? No. She faced him fully, her voice a quiet vow. You are oath-kin to the very sovereign. And the Zarthans know it. What does that mean? It means if they kill you. Her eyes flared with controlled fury. Every very fleet will answer. By law. Elias felt the weight of her words. He hadn't just saved a life. He had shifted the balance of two empires. Rhea's voice dropped to a whisper, the first gentle tone she had used with him. You gave blood to save me. She rested her forehead lightly against his. And now, the universe will answer that choice. The escape corridor descended for nearly half a kilometer beneath the summit hall. Metal walls glistened with condensation, lit only by flickering emergency strips. Elias leaned heavily against the rail, each step harder than the last. The nanites in his bloodstream had finished their work on Rhea, but they hadn't finished taking their toll on him. His heartbeat jolted in uneven bursts. Rhea noticed. Your pulse is unstable, she said, slowing her pace. Comes with the whole bleeding to save alien queens thing, he whispered. She halted and turned to him, eyes bright in the dim corridor. You joke when your life is slipping? I'm fine. You are not. His legs buckled. Rhea caught him before he fell completely. Her grip was firm, not gentle, not hesitant. Intentional. She braced him against the wall and pressed two fingers to his neck, reading his pulse. How much of your blood did you give me? Enough. That is not an answer. Enough to keep the galaxy from burning. His vision blurred at the edges. He fought to keep focus. Let's keep moving, he murmured. She didn't release him. Elias Drake, you traded your life for mine without hesitation. Someone had to. Her jaw clenched. Do not reduce your sacrifice to necessity. He opened his mouth to reply. The corridor vibrated with the impact of a blast above them. Rhea pulled Elias forward, guiding him through a tight turn before the entire ceiling could collapse. They reached a reinforced hatch at the end of the passage. Rhea laid her palm against a panel of airy script. The metal responded, unlocking with a soft click. Beyond the hatch was a cavernous transport bay, abandoned but intact. Dust drifted through the air like ash in a silent snowfall. A small transport craft rested on a platform. Their way out. Rhea helped Elias down the last few steps. Strap in, she ordered. He shook his head. You're flying? I am capable. That wasn't a critique, he said as he dragged himself into the co-pilot seat. Just surprised. She input the launch sequence with swift, practiced movements. Outside the bay doors, small plumes of fire from the summit hall still burned. The sky churned with smoke. The Zarthans weren't retreating, they were repositioning to intercept. Elias strapped in and fought back a wave of dizziness. Once we lift off, they'll track us. No. Rhea activated a second panel. Not if we broadcast something they fear. The transport hummed, rising from the platform. What exactly do they fear? He asked. Rhea turned her head, meeting his gaze. They fear consequence. The transport launched into the ash-thick sky. Zarthan fighters locked onto them immediately, 3 then 6, forming a tightening wedge. Incoming pursuit, Elias said. I see them. She angled the transport low, skimming along the cliffs. Towers of burnt stone streaked by, wind howling. The fighters gained ground. Rhea flicked a switch, activating the vessel's encrypted transmitter. A projection flickered into view. The Oriate Rite sigil, shimmering gold. Elias stared at it. That's the vow symbol? Yes. Her fingers slid across the controls. It marks you as oathkin. Anyone attacking you violates sacred doctrine. Will that stop Sarthans? No. She looked straight ahead, voice ice. But it will stop the Very from standing down. Elias processed that. The reward wasn't affection. Or intimacy. Or blind loyalty. The reward was power. A power he didn't ask for, but now held. Rhea, Elias said quietly. What does being Oathkin actually mean? Don't give me the ceremonial answer. It means, she said, our lives are now interdependent. If you fall, the very council collapses. And if you fall? His voice was low. What happens to me? You inherit my authority. The implication hit like a shock. I become sovereign? You become more than that. Her voice held reverence. You become the only voice capable of ordering our fleets across the stars. A heartbeat of silence hung between them. You gave blood to save me, she said. The reward is not affection. She looked at him, unwavering. It is power beyond rank, beyond species, beyond anything you can imagine. Elias swallowed. Rhea, I didn't bleed for power. I know. Her eyes softened. That is why you earned it. A crackle erupted over the comm system. Zalor. Human, he said, tone dripping venom. Return the strategos. Your survival will be quick. Not interested, Elias replied. You misunderstand your position. The Very will not risk war for you. Rhea flicked a switch, routing her voice into the channel. We do more than risk it, Zalor. She leaned in. We answer it. Silence. Then, you invoke the Oriate right, Zalor snarled. You would bind your people to a human? I bound myself to the one who values peace enough to bleed for it. Elias watched the sky ahead. The Zarthan fighters broke formation. A missile lock warning blared. Rhea. I see it. She dove the transport toward the canyon floor, engine screaming. The missile followed. Elias forced his shaking hands to work the auxiliary controls. If he blacked out, they'd crash. His vision pulsed with dark spots. Tell me what to do, he muttered through clenched teeth. Trigger the vent stabilizers when I bank. On your mark. She pulled hard left. The transport scraped the canyon wall, sparks flying. Elias hit the stabilizers. The missile overshot, smashing into a canyon pillar. Zalor's voice returned, furious. You cannot escape. He is not Very. Rhea's answer was immediate. He is Oathkin. The fighters hesitated. Not retreating, not advancing. Uncertainty. Elias stared at the sigil pulsing on the dashboard. They're not firing. No Zarthan wants to be the first to trigger a war they cannot win. He looked at her, really looked. Her strength wasn't in her blade. Her power wasn't her title. It was the way she believed in consequence. We're clear, Rhea said at last. Elias exhaled. His body sagged, exhaustion taking over. The transport leveled as they cleared the canyon and rose into open sky. Rhea powered down offensive systems and turned toward him. For the first time, no war stood between them. You gave blood, she said softly. Not knowing what it would cost. It was worth it. Rhea reached up and touched the side of his face, not as a warrior examining weakness, but as a sovereign acknowledging someone who changed her world. The Very owe you a life debt, she murmured. But I owe you something deeper. He raised a brow. Is that where you tell me the reward beyond wildest dreams part? She shook her head gently. What I give you is not pleasure. She pressed her forehead carefully to his, the very sign of sacred acknowledgement. It is a place in our future. His pulse steadied, not from the nanites but from her words. In our history, she continued, you will not be remembered as a negotiator or soldier. You will be remembered as the human who bled to end a war. Elias couldn't speak. And if you choose to walk beside me, she added, I will open every door of my world, not because you saved me. She paused. But because you changed me. The transport broke through the last layer of cloud. Light flooded the cockpit. A new dawn. Not on Cherith. On two civilizations that had never imagined a future with a human at the center of their fate. Ria, Elias said, voice quiet but certain. Let's go rewrite peace. Her fingers threaded through his, not romantic. Not ceremonial. Equal.